Raymond Benson, welcome back to Suit Up the Podcast.
Hello, Terrence. How are you?
I am doing awesome. You have a great Dr. No background, which, okay, I just have to, because we're talking Felix Leiter, The Hook in the
Sit
Eye.
down. Sit down. Go to the table.
Okay, those Ken Adams sets, it- this is where film has such a unique visual opportunity to be able to create these environments and settings that work so sticky in the mind. And I think that to point of talking the hook in the eye, this is where your writing in a crime noir setting fits so well within what I think the James Bond books are kind of at their best when they're a hard-boiled detective that happens to be espionage, happens to be men's adventure, and that it's more just a springboard of the genre.
Right. Well, that all goes back to the fact that Fleming wrote the majority of the books in the 1950s, and that's when, film noir and everything was still going pretty strong. Film noir, we didn't call it that until the probably in the late 50s or 60s. The French invented that term. But that started in the 40s, in the early 40s, and kind of lasted all through the 40s and the 50s decade. And I'm a film historian. I taught film
Hmm.
history, and I argue that film noir really ended in 1958, and
Yes.
everything after that is neo noir.
Hmm.
And but all these pulp novels, and the Raymond Chandlers and the Cornell Woolriches and all these great pulp writers, um, they were the basis of that. And Fleming,
Hmm.
he liked Raymond Chandler. They bounced off of each other.
Have you heard
uh,
their interview thing that like BBC did?
yes, yes, absolutely.
It's so
um,
cool.
I kind of think that Fleming wrote Diamonds Are Forever kind of as a trying to do a Raymond Chandler kind of thing, you know. Yeah. So it yeah. So I kind of always have viewed the Fleming era, the
Hmm.
the Fleming milieu as sort of this noir
Hmm.
spy and mystery thriller genre.
Hmm. Just out of curiosity, because I do know that you've hosted at like your local library this film club thing from time to time, which is really neat. Do you have a go-to film noir that you like to like? This is your
Oh, yeah.
easy
I think
recommendation.
Double Indemnity
Mm,
is the quintessential film noir. It's the one that I would put in a time capsule, and say this is film noir, because it has all the elements,
mhm.
all the different things that identify a film as film noir. It has them all. You know, the femme fatale, the black and white photography, the witty dialogue that is, really innuendos for stuff they couldn't say at that time, and betrayal and twists and cynical uh, tone and voiceover narration, and it's got it all, and it's wonderful.
I'm gonna have to give it a
And no
rewatch.
happy ending. No happy ending is very
Yes.
important too.
I- okay, so I am Veritas Entertainment is coming out with a noir collection, and I'm writing an introduction that's just this is what I love about noir. And like I was realizing there's so many people have very strong opinions. This is noir and this is not. And I was like, what is the distillation? But I do think that that attitude of is there a happy ending? What can joy be found? Is there a sense of hope? Is really that crux of what makes good noir good
Well,
noir.
I think for a pure film noir, there can't be a happy ending.
Hmm.
There are what movies that I would call film noir that do have a happy ending,
Thank you, censors.
but yeah. But for the pure,
Hmm.
you know, the ones that really count. Um, and then people are, yeah, I see this stuff all the time online, and people are saying, "Oh yeah, Blade Runner's film noir." No, it's not. You know, uh, uh, Don't get me started. I'm pretty strict and kind of unmovable in my opinions about film noir. Some people are much more loose about it.
We will
Um,
have to do a film noir podcast episode at some point because I think that that sounds absolutely amazing. Maybe we'll even do double indemnity. But I have to ask, okay, Felix Leiter, The Hook in the Eye, how did this project start? Because when IFP they've announced a bunch of projects. Of all the projects they've announced, this is the one that the moment I saw it, I was like, oh dear goodness, all of my dreams are coming true.
well, I kind of hope that people like you and that people felt that would could have written to them and said that. That I think that would have might have helped boost the thing. Um, but it did get a lot of attention on social media. I know. Um, I approached them with it. I had been thinking for years, really ever since I did the Bond novels
Hmm.
for 25 years. I had thought, boy, I'd love to do a Felix Leiter novel. And
Hmm.
and I knew exactly how I would do it. I would set it in Fleming's timeline
Hmm.
and, right after the shark attack
The
and really kind
mishap.
of explore how he would deal with losing an arm. And and I did pitch it a couple of times over the years. And at those times, it just wasn't in their wheelhouse. They were doing, what they wanted to
Hmm.
do, and that was fine. I understood. But lately, as I saw that there were spin-offs
Hmm.
happening, I pitched it again. And this time they went, yeah. And I think they wanted to do some kind of serial
Hmm.
project. And this kind of went ding, this will be that. And so it kind of all meshed
Hmm.
together.
The
And
timing,
I
the
got to
planets
say,
aligned.
right, the planets align. And I got to say that the team there are absolutely great. And they were very enthusiastic and um, uh, wonderful to work with. So, I started it in May 2024.
Okay.
So wrote it pretty much all over the summer of that summer, finished it around September. Then it went through editing last fall and it was ready to go you know, by early spring of 2025.
Hmm.
So they made the date for May, the end of May when the serial would start. But we all know what happened with the serial. Just didn't work out like we wanted it to. So they released the whole ebook on
Hmm.
June 24th.
Hmm.
So people can, get it if you read on a
Linked
Kindle
in
or
the show
another
notes.
device. By all means, I know a lot of Bond fans and readers go, well, I like print books or I want that book on my shelf. I know collectors. I'm a collector myself. I like
Yes.
print books too, but I also read on a Kindle. And if you want to read the book, by all means, go get the Kindle version because it's not very expensive.
Well, and it's really the
It
ease of
costs
being
less
able to
than a
read.
than lunch at McDonald's.
Yes. Okay, and it's also the ease of being able to read. So I'm getting ready to, my wife and I are going on a delayed honeymoon. We're going to Paris, and I'm kicking out a handful of Kindle books because I don't want to pack a dozen books in my backpack.
Exactly.
I want something to read on the plane. I can just hold my phone or tablet and just scroll.
Yeah.
Or people are always talking about being on social media too much. Do you know what a cure to that is? Download Kindle and just, or even iBooks, and just read a book those handful of minutes you're sitting down. It's shocking how
Yeah.
easy that is to actually get some good
Yeah.
pages read.
Yeah. I have all of Fleming's books on my Kindle, plus a bunch of other stuff, and I can carry them wherever I go.
Hmm.
So, I'm a big fan of Kindle, and I love my
Okay,
device. It's
actually, I'll ask you this because this is my theory that the new pulp is Kindle. Like in terms of that concept of something being published easily, quickly, and mass market is essentially the Kindle version is that now.
well, it could be. Now, I think a lot of legacy publishers, New York publishers, they charge too much for their Kindle book. Um, when you shouldn't have to pay $20 for an ebook when the
Yeah.
hardcover is 25.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, I understand that it costs a lot of money to edit and all that, but ebooks, they should be affordable. And I
Hmm.
think IFP has that good idea that less than $10 is ideal, you know.
Hmm.
So,
And for my money's worth, it's nice to, I'll look forward to getting the nice printed copy, putting it on my shelf, hopefully signed by you at some point. But having the digital version allows me to read it now, which I'm sorry, I can't wait. I'm an impatient person. So guys, link in the show notes, get your copy of The Hook in the Eye. I think that their initial plan to serialize it was a really cool one because this concept, this it's 1950s, it's a mystery noir. There's so many elements of The Hook in the Eye that feel like one of those old movie serials in the best way possible. I was absolutely thrilled.
well, that was the idea of doing it, and I wrote it that way too, so that it could be divided into 10 episodes,
Hmm.
um, with cliffhangers at the end and all that. But um, I know I know that there were some readers who were kind of frustrated with that too.
Hmm.
They wanted the whole thing. They wanted to just keep reading. They didn't want to wait for the next episode. So, um, you know, I ultimately I think it was a good thing that
Hmm.
the whole thing came out.
Yes.
I admired the idea about the serial, and I was all for it, and I thought it was a good idea. But when the technical issues
Hmm.
occurred, it made more frustrations for
Yes.
readers and us than was palatable.
I know
So,
that trying to get a podcast episode out when I'm having technical difficulties is an absolute nightmare. I can't imagine what it was like on the back end trying to work on this. Just that.
oh, that first week when the second episode was trying to update to people's,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, we were getting emails and messages and complaints and bad reviews on Amazon, and
Oh,
it was just like, ah, um,
okay, but with the serialization, you guys got to do something with that initial plan. You were able to do the Hooked on Lighter segments. How did
yes.
that start? Because they're
Well,
delightful
that was their
segments.
idea. Um, they asked me if I would do that. They wanted to do some, how um, when you're watching a streaming television show,
Hmm.
sometimes after the episode you watch, there's like a 5 minute, little interview with the cast or the filmmakers where they talk about that episode that you just saw. So it was something like that. It was going to be a little sort of recap, me, the author, talking about the background of that episode and stuff. So and I recorded them all before the serialization thing exploded.
Hmm.
So they're
Okay.
kind of in the context of the serialization, but
w-
we decided to just
Yeah.
keep them going. I think there's three left to post.
When they inevitably do the audiobook version, I want to like have those as a compilation that happens at the end of the audiobook because that's this thing that's also starting to come out more where the author will like have a couple of notes or comments at the end of the audiobook about the book that people just read.
You mean audio files then
Yes.
of the
Yeah, so
huh,
like it's
interesting.
included as like an extra chapter at the end as a bonus material essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could suggest that.
Yeah, I'll
Sure.
write to IFP now. Hopefully the list will be okay. So one of the things that you brought out in The Hook in the Eye that I was fascinated by because it seems so Fleming is the Promethean movement. And in one of the Hooked on Lighter things, you said that this was an actual real thing. So do you mind sharing what is the Promethean movement and how did you decide to weave it into the plot?
Well, I was searching for kind of a group who would be, I got to be careful about spoilers here. Um, you know, you always, when you start a Bond novel,
Hmm.
the important thing is figuring out who the villain is and what the
Hmm.
villain's plot is. That's what you got to do, because you're given Bond. You know your character, and frankly, I knew Felix Leiter like the back of my hand. I knew that character. I knew men like I'm from Texas,
Yes.
so. Um, I knew guys like that. I mean, he's a different generation
Mm-hmm.
than me, and probably had a different world outlook.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as personality and sensibility, that
Can I quickly
Texas sort of,
say
yeah.
I was reading Diamonds Are Forever as a reread just before I started The Hook in the Eye. And the thing that just blew me away was how the characterization that you give Leiter works so perfectly within the context of the Fleming timeline. Like I know that was the goal, but it absolutely without a beat, I feel like you can go from one to the other, and this feels like it just slides right into the canon.
Well, the same with Live and Let Die before it. Live
Hmm.
and Let Die, Hook in the Eye, Diamonds Are Forever. It's almost like a trilogy. Um, so yeah, that was the intention. It was what happened to Felix in between those two books, while Bond is off doing Moonraker. Um,
So the
so
Promethean
yeah,
movement.
so the Prometheans they did exist. It was mostly as a result of World War One.
Hmm.
And they were fiercely anti-communist. They were against the creation of the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was starting to spread and
Hmm.
eke into Poland and Ukraine and all these Eastern European countries. And these were small factions of intellectuals and people who kind of under the scenes were trying to, with propaganda and other means, sometimes violent means, stop the spread of communism. So in some ways, they were an ally to the United States,
Hmm.
but in many ways, they were not also allies. They could
Kind of
be
like
very well
watching The
working.
Living Daylights now in retrospect.
Yes, 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 yes. So when I was doing research, I came across them almost accidentally. And I went, oh, this looks interesting. And I started reading about it. And then I read some more about it. And I went, oh, I got to use this, Um, so that's where it came from. And they did, there were little factions that existed even up in after World War II.
Hmm.
It's probably pretty much died out, but there could be some still left
Well,
here and
I feel like
there.
it fits so well within your Bond books always do a great job creating a good villainous organization or a solid villainous group, like the Pythagoreans in The Facts of Death.
Right.
So it has, when we say the Prometheans, I'm like, oh, this is perfect because it has that great. Again, Fleming usually did a great job of interweaving like these classical Greek themes in his books that using that was just chef's kiss.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to say are the Prometheus the bad guys in this book? I don't know. Smirch plays a role in this book too.
Yes.
So, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody listening who hasn't read the book.
Okay, again, that is one of the things that I think that where this fills within the noir genres is that you use that question of what's going on. You toss Felix into a situation where he actually needs to A, do detective work. Shocking, he works for the Pinkertons now. So like, yes, he has to do detective work. And it's a question of loyalties. Like I think that's another essential element of good noir fiction is it's a question of who's on what side and who is not telling me what I need to know.
Right, right. Are there, who has the secrets and lies? Are they secrets and lies? And Dora, the female character, is she a good person, a bad person? Is she a femme fatale? What is she? And Felix is like, of course, Felix is being good film noir, or well, good noir. It's not film noir yet, but it's noir. Being good noir, the hero has to fall for the dame.
Which works really well again within the context of the story. Felix, part of what I really liked in like a lot of people make the joke that when you watch Live and Let not Live and Let Die, License to Kill, Felix is far too happy after being bitten by a shark. But realistically, like one of the things I think that does stick well within the characterization you have of Felix is that despite all the circumstances, he's generally a chipper guy who makes the best of the situation he's in. And I love that in all these scenarios, you never lose track that he wants to do the right thing. He wants to do the thing that gets him what he wants, but he also wants to figure out what's going on. He has a good attitude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that comes right from Fleming. I mean, when you read the six books that Felix is in, he is really this happy-go-lucky kind of joker kind of guy. I mean, he is sort of the second banana to Bond, but he's always joking around and he's always like very exuberant about, hey, let's go up to Harlem and have a good time. And, here's the menu. You're going to order this, this, and this, and you're going to love it. And, this drink is fabulous. You got to try this, and, he's like this tour guide for Bond when he's in America and just, being this enthusiastic guy.
Hmm.
And he's full of humor too. And I don't want to denigrate any of the actors who played Felix in all the movies. We had what, eight different actors. They all were different. They were all very different, and they were never Ian Fleming's character
Yeah.
ever.
I was actually going to ask,
You
do you
know,
have like, again, not to like, yes, we are picking favorites at this point. Do you have like a preferred Felix Leiter in the
in the
on-screen
movies,
performances? Yeah.
I would say Rick Van Nutter is the
Hmm.
closest.
Yeah.
Not
No,
only in
that's fair.
looks and attitude, pretty
Hmm.
much. He's missing his prosthesis. They never did the prosthesis in the movies, which is a shame.
Hmm. I think that
Um,
that again is one of those things where in The Hook in the Eye, you do a great job of it's very easy to go to treat someone's injuries or disabilities for story fodder or do it poorly, but you handled it, I think, with such great grace and aplomb for he's adjusting to what this new world looks like. He's not happy about it, but he's making the best of his circumstances. And I think you just really threaded what could have been tilting too far one way or the other very well.
well, thanks. I really worked at that. I wanted to research exactly. Fleming was not specific about his prosthesis. He just
No.
called it a hook.
Yeah.
And I've said this in other interviews. When I was a kid and I first read the Fleming books, I pictured in my mind a pirate hook,
Yes.
and that would, of course, not be correct. It was, it's in those days and around the early 50s, it still
Hmm.
would have been what the veterans in the late 40s would have been using,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you saw The Best Years of Our Lives, the
Hmm.
movie that Harold Russell was in and won an
Hmm.
Oscar for. He had two prostheses, and they're pinchers,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what Felix would have had.
Hmm.
Um, so I found a doctor who knew his history of prosthetics, and he helped me, figure all that stuff out and how it all worked. So I had no idea, like, that
Yeah,
they
the
use
back
their
muscles.
shoulders and their
Uh-huh.
muscles to make this all happen. Wow, how difficult that would be.
So my like hobby is I like to weightlift. So there are certain like when you describe a certain muscle group that you have to move, my brain like starts to do that. Okay, if I was pulling this, I'd have to do that. And I'm like, oh wow, like the amount of specific mind muscle that you have to do to figure out how to work those mechanics. It just really does that thing where like you're already doing this in first person again, classic in detective story, detective fiction. You're getting from Felix's POV, but it really brings you into where he's at physically as a person. And I just thought that was a great touch to the story.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
When you make a small comment at one point in the story of weapons of choice, and I just have to ask, was that an intentional nod to one of the compilations of your Bond books, or is it just that
No,
that happened to just come out?
it just happened that way. And choosing the Ivor Johnson was, I always go to this. I have a gun guy, that I
Uh-huh.
always go to
You
for
have your birth
for
Boothroyd?
uh, for for stuff, and because I'm not a gun guy, and he, being a Bond fan and knowing the character well and knowing the Fleming books well, he came up with this. I thought it was perfect for Felix, the hammerless
Hmm.
Ivor Johnson, and Fleming never really stated what kind of weapon he used or anything. So I was free to do whatever I wanted in that regard. Um, so yeah, I think that worked out fine.
The
And
world
then
is.
and I threw it, I had to get in the Studelac,
Yes,
you
you
know.
did get the Studelac in.
Yeah,
Okay, for those who don't
I
know,
just
what
knew
is the Studelac?
fans would be expecting it. They
Yes.
would just be expecting, where's the Studelac? Well, because of the year that I set the thing in, the Studelac was not made until 1953. So I had to have him place one on order. So at least I got it in there.
Well, and again, it's just stuff like that where it's the little nods that really tie the world together. I loved that there's a character that shows up who may or may not be British, and when you have that moment, it's like, oh, this is a cute nod, and perhaps inversion of the story. I don't want to spoil things. People need to check it out because, again, great bits. I would be remiss if I did not ask about the cover art. Michael Gillette's cover for this book.
Thomas,
Thomas Gillette, sorry.
Thomas Gilbert, Thomas
Thomas
Gilbert.
Gilbert. That's right. Gillette did the other covers.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
apologies.
Thomas
But
Gilbert.
Thomas
Yeah, I
Gilbert's
love the
cover.
cover. It's fantastic. I want a poster of it, Well, you know, at least an 8.5 by 10, because I don't have room for a big poster. But yeah, I'm going to try to get a at least a print of that
It's
framed.
just absolutely gorgeous because then he also did the Che Che Bang Bang cover, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
He
just remember
did.
seeing it and being like, this is amazing because it presents all of the elements and it looks that striking old pulp book type
Yeah,
style in a way
yeah.
that I don't see enough publishers like making things that look that cool anymore.
Well,
So I love it.
American publishers are not into illustrative covers.
No,
It's all, British. The British do it really well. I mean, just compare my British Bond books with the American counterparts.
I have
The
some of your
covers are just
American ones. The first editions, I'm like, oh, I wish the covers were
yeah.
more interesting, but I'm glad to
I mean,
have
you
them.
go into a Barnes and Noble and just look at the new releases, and it's all author, title,
Yeah,
and that's
random
it.
person like in the faded background. They're back to
Yeah, yeah,
the
maybe a
thing.
little color, a little something in the background. It's
Yeah.
all, yeah.
So
So I
I
was very happy with this cover. I wanted, in my mind, I wanted, a Richard Chopping style kind of thing, but Thomas came up with something really, really, really great. So,
it's
and I
very
got to see the
striking.
evolution of it. I saw the original sort
Oh,
of concept art, and I kind of went,
uh-huh.
oh, ooh, let's develop that a little more. And IFP and I worked with him
Mm-hmm.
on, let's tweak that, color it this way,
Mm-hmm.
there we go.
Again, I hope you do get the poster of it because it was fantastic. And I do feel like most of the covers I printed a poster version of I'm pointing because it's on the wall in front of me of Forever in a Day. It's the one time I'll say I think the US cover is better than the British cover of a Bond
Okay.
book.
Yeah,
But yeah, most of the time it's not particularly inviting or interesting. But no,
right.
the hook in the eye, they did a fantastic job. Weirdly enough, though, despite the color on the cover, whenever I was reading the story, I actually read it almost in black and white because, again, I think you do a great job of evoking that kind of noir medium. And
Yes.
like, again, I can't tell people enough. It's a very well written, great twisting, turning story where I feel like I could have picked this book up. If you had told me it was written in the Fleming time period, I would have been like 98% there. It has virtually no anachronisms, which I adore because I feel like that also is a tricky spot to weave because history is history is history. But you do a great job of threading the needle on making it seem like so perfectly of the time without having problematic elements, which even today we're still talking about with some of Fleming's stuff.
Right. Yeah, I worked really hard to do that. And the road trip was really fun because I had taken that same road trip 3 times in my life, the
Oh,
the
wow.
same route.
Hmm.
Uh, and of course, I'm sure it had changed a lot since 1952 because we didn't have interstates then. He would have been driving on U.S. highways or
Yeah.
state highways. But the interstates pretty much were either on top of those or right next to them.
Hmm.
So he would have made the same stops that I did, and I had to just really do hard research on what kind of hotels and motels were
Hmm.
around then, because I tried to use real places when I
Hmm.
could find them, and restaurants, places they would stop, things like that.
Do you have a favorite
The
little nod that you were like that you were like, oh, this was a fascinating place. I'm glad I was able to use that in the book.
Well, my I think my favorite sequence in the book is the sequence in Dallas where the cockfight takes place.
Oh my goodness. I loved that so much because that's the kind of thing that I feel like if Fleming could have written a cockfight in a story, A, he would have. It's just such an American oddity that, like, I know it's not exclusive to America in any way, shape, or form,
Right.
but it has such a sense of place and time that, I mean, oh, it was so
Well,
much fun.
it's kind of the equivalent of the Harlem or the strip clubs or the
Hmm.
voodoo stuff in Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
I wanted something kind of bizarre and macabre, because when Fleming was in America and Bond is in America, he Fleming concentrates on the bizarre
Yes.
about America. The Bond just like the billboards that he sees and the way people act in Las Vegas and all this, Bond is like amused and horrified at the same time, you know. And I wanted a little bit of that. And so and there are some surreal sort of sequences in Fleming's books that
Hmm.
were I mean, the whole squid sequence in Doctor No, that's very surreal. Um, so I wanted a surreal sequence like that, some kind of
Hmm.
local color that was bizarre and
Hmm.
a little creepy and dangerous.
Well, and I think that it has this interesting extra layer that I don't know how it I read an extra layer. I don't know how intentional it was or not, but it's interesting to have the cockfight where they're literally adding extra weapons to these animals, and then you have Felix
Oh,
standing there who has a hook as a hand. It just I thought it
oh,
was an interesting like not uncanny valley, but that kind of thing where there's this interesting contrast and dichotomy you get between the man seeing there and the actions.
right, right. Well, those blades that they attach to the roosters are real. I mean, that
Hmm.
they really do that. So yeah, so that was great, and that whole carnival sort of atmosphere.
Hmm.
I mean, I went to places like that. I never saw a cockfight, but I was at places like that where they would have rattlesnake meat being cooked, uh, and
Welcome to Texas,
and
folks.
yeah, it was. You know,
Okay,
there
on
were
that
sideshows back then.
on that note of Texas, you made a comment in one of the Hooked on Lighters that you very intentionally made Felix from Dallas, which because
Yeah,
his hometown is not a part of the canon. So I'm
right.
curious, like what went into that decision?
Well, I see Felix as a pretty sophisticated guy.
Hmm.
He's intelligent, you know. So, I figured that he had to have come from an urban setting,
Hmm.
not a rural setting, not a farm kind of, Texas country horse riding community, or any of that, because that was still pretty much a thing in the late 40s, early 50s. I think he came from a big city like Houston or Dallas or maybe even Austin, although Austin at that time was very small. San Antonio. I picked Dallas because that was the most metropolitan city in
Hmm.
Texas at the time. And I just figure he would have had that kind of background because he was comfortable in New York. He was
Hmm.
comfortable in Washington, D.C. He was comfortable in Paris. So he had to have that urban background, I think.
Hmm. Again, I think that it's fascinating to see because he's such a great character in the Bond books as the second banana. He plays the second banana really well. It was fun to get to see Felix's story in a lot of ways and dig deeper beneath just the smiling eyes and sandy blonde hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really wanted to explore that guy because I love that guy. I mean, I've kind of he's one of my favorite things about the Fleming books. And I I the movies never really
Hmm.
explored him. He was just a plot function in the
Yes.
movies.
Well, unfortunately, that's what the interchanging actors very much showed. I was fact checking myself because there's never the only other Felix Leiter thing that's ever been done was I think a Dynamite Comics that I saw. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
six
yeah, I
issues
did see
and
that.
that was
Yeah,
it. So
yeah, I saw that.
I'm really glad that you wrote this and were able to give us what I think is one of my top reads of the year, quite frankly, just because it fits within so many of my favorite genre elements. You've got your noir, you've got your detective, you've got a good adventure serial crime story vibe that just it resonates, it sings. It is what I would enjoy. So people definitely check it out. Again, link in the show notes. Do you have plans or like is there an outline for anything in the future?
Not at the moment. I mean,
Okay.
you know, um, we haven't talked about if we're going to do another one. I don't know if we will, but kind of depends on if
Hmm.
we can get this one to readers in America, because of the tariff situation or what. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Hopefully, I have high hopes that it's going to roll out in other formats like audiobook and maybe a hardcover, maybe American publisher someday,
Hmm.
But right now, Ian Fleming Publications has made this their first original novel
Hmm.
under their own imprint, and I'm very honored and flattered that they did that. I know, they're a young publisher.
Hmm.
There's some kinks that need to be worked out. But
I like
I'm
that they're being
I'm
daring. Like honestly, I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
that's
absolutely. I
awesome to see.
and they're fantastic people to work with, and it was such a joy to be back.
Hmm.
I mean, it had been 25 years almost since I had been. I tried to get away, but they pulled me back in. Uh, no, I really wanted. I was very happy to be asked to be allowed back in. And I think of them as family. I think of all the other authors as siblings.
Hmm.
So it's it's a great thing. Um,
That's so cool. I'm really excited about The Hook in the Eye. Again, people get it now, linked in the show notes. And Raymond, where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and what you've got in the pipeline?
well, RaymondBenson.com is the official website. That's where it has, pretty much everything. If you're on social media, I mean, if you're on Facebook, my personal page, which is almost at the limit of how many friends I can get. That's where I post, more personal stuff and fun stuff and movie reviews and things like that. I do have an author page on Facebook that is more geared just toward my writing work and stuff. So it only gets updated when there's something new to put up there.
You've also been
I am
more
on
active on
Blue.
Instagram.
I am on Instagram. I'm not very good at Instagram. I'm very much a novice on Instagram. My son actually posts a lot for me. I find Instagram kind of crazy. I don't understand it. Maybe I'm just too much of a boomer,
If it
but
makes you feel
it just
better,
doesn't work the same way.
I feel
The
the
fact that
same
you can.
way about Twitter, Threads, X, all not what's the other one? Blue Sky. All of those I struggle with more. So if it makes you feel better.
Oh, well, I'm on Blue Sky, and I find Blue Sky pretty easy, and I do post on that. I've been posting on Instagram a little more. I wish they would let you put links in your posts.
Yes. Hmm.
Instead you have to put it in the link tree, which was another hurdle I had to learn and everything how to do that. But when I see people, posting reels and music and all these things and sharing, I'm going, how do you do that? How do I do that?
Don't get me started on TikTok. I don't understand.
Oh, I'm
I
not.
just
Yeah, I'm not.
no.
I'm not. I'm not.
You're not gonna
Not
start
there.
dancing on screen? Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Right.
Raymond is always a pleasure. Also, I'll shout out people need to check out not only The Hook in the Eye, but also the Black Stiletto series because I
Oh,
feel like there's a great deal of the best kind of synergy. If you like one, you will like the other 90%. Like, again, you have done a great job of bringing what I'll say is a fresh voice to this kind of pulp noir serial. Like, this is the original stuff that I'd like to see more of. So thank you for keeping that torch going.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me back on. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'll put the note for Double Indemnity in my future list.
Okay, good.
Awesome. Thank you, Raymond.